Okay, let's get going. We're going to start with the Department of Budget and Management. I'm Secretary. Oh, no. What do we have? We have an analyst?
We have to do elections first.
No, we're going to do the other one first. What? Oh, wow. I guess we're not starting there. We're missing our analyst at the moment. Now he went over there. That's caused a little. And we are resuming after a short break.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies for the delay. For the record, my name is Jacob Cash. I'm a policy analyst for the Department of Legislative Services. Today I'll be presenting the fiscal 2026 operating budget for the Department of Budget and Management, Office of the Secretary. This unit includes the primary budgetary control units for the executive branch, including operating budget, capital budget, financial management, and collections on debt owed to the state. If you join me on the cover page, you can see the fiscal 2026 budget allowance is $45 million. This represents a 24% decline from 2025. And the overall decrease of $14.5 million is driven by $15 million for the Government Efficiency Initiative. The Government Efficiency Initiative consists of a pay-for-performance contract between Boston Consulting Group and DBM to search through the state budget to find hidden efficiencies and potential savings. The project focuses on key drivers of state government operations and cost, including information technology services, procurement contracting, fleet management services, and real estate management. The $15 million in this budget in fiscal 2025 represents the maximum award to the consultants if the initiative results in $75 million in total statewide savings. 2 contractual staff have also been hired by DBM to oversee the consultants' work. Beginning with the performance evaluation of CCU on page 5, Exhibit 1 shows the CCU revenues versus expenses over the past decade. While there was a slight increase in collections and expenses, no net profit was generated in fiscal 2024. And you can see this on Exhibit 2 on page 6. CCU collected a lower share of debts by value in fiscal 2024 than in previous years at only 8%. If this rate had been at historical levels, CCU would have been able to cover most or all of their budgeted expenses rather than needing to take cost containment actions to avoid a net loss. DLS is asking the agency to discuss any cost containment actions taken to reduce expenditures to the level of available resources and efforts to return to a net profit. The second performance evaluation, beginning on page 7, is for the state vehicle fleet goal of ensuring that at least 25% of new vehicles purchased by state agencies are zero-emission vehicles, or ZEVs. As shown in Exhibit 3 on page 8, the state met this goal in fiscal 2024, purchasing 90 ZEVs and reaching 27% of total purchases for which an option was available. Exhibit 5 on page 11 breaks down the budget by item. Personnel costs make up nearly 2/3 of this budget, which is highly administrative. Collections service contracts for CCU are the second largest budget item, and the BAR's budget system is another large expense at $2.5 million. Exhibit 6 on page 12 breaks down the proposed budget change of $14.5 million by item. The main source of budget decline is the $15 million award for the Government Efficiency Initiative, and without this change, the budget would increase. One-time fiscal 2025 spending on the capital budgeting major IT project causes a reduction of $2.9 million that is partially offset by $2.3 million in increases for salary increases and $945,000 for 7 new positions added. There's a discussion of the BRFA at the bottom of page 12. Current law requires that DBM identify the agencies and budget items affected by proposed across-the-board reductions. The BRFA eliminates this requirement, allowing DBM to budget across-the-board reductions without identifying where those savings would be. The $50 million in efficiency savings would not otherwise be able to be budgeted unless specific savings were identified. However, DLS recommends that this provision be amended so that the requirement is only lifted for fiscal 2026. The personnel data section begins on page 13. DBM Secretary is adding 7 new positions in fiscal 2026, which are related to increasing analytical and supervisory capacity within the department. The added positions include a Director of Revenue Policy and Analysis, 2 Budget Analyst 1 positions, 1 Budget Analyst Level 2, 1 Senior Program Manager, and 1 Supervisory Budget Examiner, and 1 new Capital Budget Supervisor. The first issue I'd like to talk about today is the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funding, that the state has remaining. These expenditures and remaining funds are listed in Exhibit 7 on page 14 by policy area. Appendix R in the fiscal 2026 budget highlights published by DBM showed approximately $3.32 billion was expended from fiscal 2021 to 2024, and there remains approximately $330 million left to expend, or 9%. States are required by the grant conditions to encumber the funds by December 31st, 2024, and expend them by December 31st, 2026. DLS is asking DBM here to discuss whether the state has obligated all of the available funds in advance of that December 31st, 2024 deadline. Exhibit 8 on page 22 summarizes the remaining funds by policy area. The $330 million is split between many areas, with the largest being broadband expansion at $83 million, or 36% of funds that remain for those projects, particularly network infrastructure. Public health has the second largest pot of funding remaining next to broadband due to the slow spending and the Healthy Schools/HVAC allotment, as well as local health department grants. Issue number 2 begins on page 23 and discusses issues with the accounting of agency resources and the closeout of revenues and expenses for each fiscal year. The Office of Legislative Audits has identified serious issues related to the fiscal 2024 closeout, focusing on errors in 5 major state agencies. Maryland Department of Health reported potential general fund liabilities totaling about $273.6 million, mainly relating to Medicaid reimbursements, a disallowance of funds in the Developmental Disabilities Administration, and obligations related to required federal fund spending under the Money Follows the Person program. The Department of Human Services failed to report $26 million in potential liabilities and reverted $64.3 million incorrectly at the end of fiscal 24, which could require replacement through future appropriations. Several deficiency appropriations were needed to resolve most of the items in the fiscal 2026 budget, including a $573 million total deficiency related to prior year shortfalls. Of this, $294.7 million was needed in general funds, mainly for the Medicaid shortfalls. Additionally, DLS notes that reversions of funds in error in fiscal 2024 and previous closeouts resulted in required fiscal 2025 deficiency appropriations totaling $89.1 million in general funds and $75 million in federal funds to resolve inadvertently reverted funds in the Department of General Services, Maryland Department of Transportation, Department of Human Services, and DBM. Reversions in error have occurred across multiple agencies in recent years as well, indicating that special attention to training related to closeout activities is warranted. Several agencies failed to provide sufficient documentation to support the reconciliation of accrued revenues. This includes MDH not substantiating $1.7 billion in accrued federal revenue, and DHS, MSDE, MDEM, and Maryland Labor having similar issues with accrued revenue entries, amounting to over $1 billion. These failures may result in unrecovered funds, which could ultimately require the use of state general funds to resolve. Additionally, a few agencies saw ending balance deficits in clearing accounts. DHS had a deficit of $100 million in a non-budgeted clearing account used for various assistance payments, and MSDE and DHS also reported year-end deficits and special funds totaling $36.5 million. Related to this issue on page 25 is a discussion of the Audit and Finance Compliance Unit, or AFCU, and the assistance they provide to agencies for closeout. AFCU provides technical assistance to select agencies related to year-end closeout activities. They provide targeted support to agencies with significant audit findings or those identified by the Comptroller's Office General Accounting Division as needing additional assistance. While AFCU is involved in reviewing the guidance provided to agencies for closeout processes, they are not currently responsible for preparing agencies for closeout in general. AFCU reports that increased resources would be necessary to be more involved in that area. Furthermore, while AFCU has access to agency submissions for year-end documentation, it does not have an established process to assess or audit the quality of the submitted content. The General Accounting Division is responsible for monitoring the timeliness of submissions, and while AFCU may be aware of agencies needing extensions, the unit only generally works to resolve deficiencies with problematic agencies. Through the culmination of these accounting issues, DLS estimates that there are significant issues with the training and retention of fiscal staff across agencies. Additional training and improved retention efforts could help address the deficiencies in financial documentation and the closeout process and avoid costly errors. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative, requesting DBM submit a report on efforts to improve the training, recruitment, and retention of fiscal staff across state agencies. Further compounding the issue of fiscal compliance is the need for MFR measures for the AFCU, beginning on page 26. The unit is now larger than the Division of Finance Administration, which is responsible for internal DBM payroll, purchasing, and budgeting. AFCU has 10 regular positions focused on resolving issues with state agency fiscal compliance. The unit received a well-needed expansion in fiscal 22 to deal with the growing level of repeat audit findings in state legislative audits from OLA. As demonstrated in Exhibit 9 on page 27, trends in repeat audit findings in state agencies have picked back up in fiscal 2024 and are now higher than at any point since fiscal 2010. Exhibit 10 on page 22 shows that there are significant issues related to program compliance, procurement and disbursement compliance, and IT system controls. Despite the recent expansion, growing audit issues, and a request in the 2024 Joint Chairman's Report to submit budget performance measures, AFCU performance measures, the unit still has not yet reported any outputs or outcomes related to their activities. The budget for this unit is $2 million in fiscal 2026, and it would help to quantitatively track how that money is being used to improve state government. Therefore, DLS recommends adopting budget bill language, restricting funds pending submission of fiscal 2025 MFR goals, objectives, and measures for outputs and outcomes relevant to AFCU. The third issue I'll be addressing today is the timing of budget amendments. The process for legislative review of budget amendments requires certain amendments to be reviewed if they increase a special federal or higher education fund appropriation by $100,000 or more. In these cases, the amendment must first be submitted to DLS, and then either the Budget Committees or the Legislative Policy Committee must review it, or 45 days must pass from the submission date. Regardless of whether a budget amendment requires legislative review, DBM submits all amendments to DLS for informational purposes. The timing of the budget amendments has raised concerns, particularly with amendments for non-reimbursable funds. Exhibit 11 on page 29 shows the timing of budget amendment submissions since fiscal 2018. Each year saw at least several late submissions, and in fiscal 2020, delays were particularly severe, with only 44% of amendments submitted in the same fiscal year as the spending. Delays continued into fiscal 2024, with 8 amendments totaling $18.4 million being submitted late into the second quarter after the fiscal year closed. These delays hinder legislative oversight, as any concerns raised during the legislative review process cannot be addressed before those funds are expended. Late submissions also restrict the ability to assess how those changes might affect future fiscal expenses and closeout issues. To improve the timeliness of budget amendments, DLS recommends modifying annual budget bill language to require all amendments be submitted by October 31st of the following fiscal year. Additionally, DBM is asked to discuss the steps it will take to ensure more timely submissions of budget amendments moving forward. This would improve the oversight, transparency, and ability to plan for future fiscal needs. Finally, the fourth issue I'll be discussing is a costly procurement delay, and beginning on page 30. DBM has a contract with Element Fleet Management to manage the maintenance, repair, and accident management program for state-owned vehicles. The contractor provides maintenance and repair services through a statewide network and handles accident reporting for participating agencies. Procurement for a new contract has faced significant delays. DGS began the process in April 2022, but encountered issues with proposals and minority business enterprise documentation, and that led them to cancel the RFP in August 2022. A second RFP closed in September 2022, but delays continued into 23 and 24 due to staffing changes and contract negotiations. DGS has been finalizing the contract since May 2023, but the award, which was originally expected this past month, has not been made. Exhibit 12 on page 31 shows the cost changes over time for this contract. The most recent contract extension in November 2024 costs $14 million for just 3 months, with daily costs increasing by 183% since the first extension in October 2021. DLS is concerned about the rising costs and delays with this procurement and is asking DBM to provide more information on the cause of the delays and the reason for increasing extension costs. The recommended actions for this budget begin on page 32 and continue through 44.
Yeah, Mr. Carey, can you just highlight the ones that are not standard?
Oh yeah, I wasn't about to go through them all. Just pointing out that 2 and 3 are new, while the rest are annual. They're summarized on page 2 and 3 for your convenience, but
Great.
that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions for the analyst? Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Helene Grady. I'm Secretary of Budget and Management. And with me at the table is Mark Nicole, our Deputy Secretary. We also have many of the members of our senior leadership team in the room with us in case there are questions for particular areas that Mark and I can't answer sufficiently. So first, I want to just share our appreciation for Jacob's thorough analysis. Want to share a little bit about our mission. The mission of the Department of Budget and Management is to assist the governor, state agencies, and their employees in providing effective, efficient, and fiscally sound government to the citizens of Maryland. We support agency efforts to achieve results by helping them obtain the fiscal, capital, and personnel resources needed to provide services to citizens. We are dedicated to providing advice and assistance with professionalism, technology tools, modern management techniques, and teamwork. Additionally, DBM supports Maryland state government workforce with competitive benefits and opportunity for growth. We appreciate the governor's and the General Assembly's support of DBM's mission and resources. You have our written testimony, our written responses to DLS questions and recommendations, so I'll just summarize here a few of them, and then we'll be happy to take any questions. On page 5, Jacob discusses the Central Collection Unit revenues and asks us to discuss any cost containment actions taken to reduce expenditures to the level of available resources and efforts to return to a net profit. What I want to share is that the CCU, the Central Collections Unit, is duly focused on returning a net profit while also enhancing our customer service levels. Both are very important to us, particularly at this point in time. Customer service levels within the CCU right now are currently challenged given significant increases in collection placement volumes over the past year. The MDTA resumed referrals of EasyPass accounts, and we anticipate an increase in collection revenue. Therefore, we do anticipate return to profitability, but not necessarily with a heavy focus on cost containment, because we are actively working hard to also enhance customer service levels, which costs some money for us to be able to do in order to be able to collect the money from the debtors. MDTA placement volume increased from 0 in fiscal '23 due to the pandemic to 3.7 million debts for $118 million in fiscal '24. In the first half of fiscal '25, EasyPass has placed an additional 8.7 million debts for $281 million. The increased volume of accounts has caused increased call and email volumes and longer wait times. If our debtors cannot reach us for the information they need to facilitate their payment, it inhibits our collection activity and ultimately will inhibit our profitability. To mitigate the customer service issues, we are planning to add 15 contractual staff to respond to calls and emails and to authorize overtime as needed. We're also planning enhancements to our website to make it easier to get account information for debtors and to facilitate payments. So as I said, while we're focused on returning to net profitability, and we anticipate that happening in the months and years ahead, we're also duly focused on spending some additional resources within CCU in order to facilitate the information our debtors need in order to make their payments. Next, on page 12, DLS recommends modifying the BRFA provision to eliminate the requirement that across-the-board reductions be specified to apply to fiscal '26 only, and we concur with that change. On page 23, Jacob asks us to discuss whether the state obligated all available funds from the ARPA funds in advance of the deadline, and we can report that yes, we have obligated all available funds ahead of the December 31st deadline. Happy to take questions on that if you have a desire for more detail. On page 26, DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting that DBM submit a report on efforts to improve the training, recruitment, and retention of fiscal staff across state agencies to improve fiscal processes, particularly at closeout. What I want to share is that DBM respectfully does not exactly concur entirely with the recommendation. We do have our position is that DBM does not have direct responsibility for addressing audit findings or overseeing the accounting functions across state agencies. However, DBM collaborates with the Comptroller's Office and state agencies on this work and will continue to enhance our collaborations. Our Audit, Finance, and Compliance Unit has been working with the Comptroller's newly launched Maryland Accounting Academy that has the goal of providing training to enhance the culture of financial management across state government. In conjunction with input and recommendations from our AFCU, we understand that the Academy will focus training on year-end closeout and agency fiscal processes that result in a more efficient and accurate year-end closing. We see DBM as playing a key role in collaborating with the Comptroller's Office and with our state agencies on this critical work, but do not agree that DBM should be considered the responsible party for overseeing all of this body of work. We do, I would say, agree with the assessment that there is much room for improvement, and like I said, we are critically focused on collaborating with the Comptroller's Office and agency fiscal personnel on those enhancements. On page 30, DLS recommends adding annual budget bill language, but modifying the language from prior years to require budget amendments to be submitted by October 31st of the next fiscal year. DBM concurs with the goal of having all amendments submitted by October 31st of the next fiscal year, although we would appreciate some flexibility in the case of exceptional circumstances. I would add that DBM intends to undertake a number of actions to assist agencies with closing their books, processing closing budget amendments in a more timely manner, including improving communication and coordination with the General Accounting Division within the Comptroller's Office, heading into and throughout closeout, clarifying DBM's closing instructions, and collaborating with GAD to improve closeout training with the agencies, as we talked about a minute ago. On page 31, DLS comments on the agency's contract for fleet maintenance and repair, and says that DBM should provide more information on the cause of recent procurement delays and the reason for increasing extension costs. I do want to clarify that the Office of State Procurement within DGS oversees and administers the procurement for this contract, not DBM. The state's average monthly cost utilized on the fleet maintenance and repair contract is approximately $2.5 million. The contract extension in November 2024 included $14 million, which we understand from the Office of State Procurement allows for additional time if needed until the next procurement is awarded. State Procurement has advised us that they anticipate the next contract in the May 2025 timeframe. We anticipate State Procurement may pursue a no-cost extension in the meantime. The state, I do want to clarify, the state only pays the vendor for services rendered. So the $14 million is a ceiling amount, but will be paid out only if that level service is provided. Respectfully, I'm going to have to probably defer detailed questions about the status of the active procurement to our colleagues at the Office of State Procurement. Next, beginning on page 32, there's a series of recommendations. I can say that DBM concurs with recommendation number 1. DBM concurs with recommendation number 2, and I just want to add that we very much apologize for the oversight in failing to include the AFCU in our agency MFR report this year, as we intended to do, but fell short of completing it in time. Recommendation number 3, where DLS is recommending adopting narrative, requesting a report on efforts made to improve training, recruitment, and retention of state agency fiscal staff. As we discussed a few minutes ago, DBM respectfully does not exactly concur with the recommendation. Recommendation 4, DBM concurs. Recommendation 5, DBM respectfully does not concur with the proposed limitation on the Secretary's authority to manage the budget, and would ask the committees to accept the language in the section in the budget as introduced. Recommendation number 6, DBM respectfully does not concur with the recommendation to disallow transfers from restricted objects of expenditure to other purposes, as in very limited circumstances this can be a useful budget management tool. The language permitting the Secretary to approve the transfer of funds from various statewide allocations for other purposes have been included in annual budget bills for several years prior to fiscal 16. Given that, DBM respectfully requests the committee reject the analyst's recommendation and allow the current administration to resume this authority. For recommendations numbers 7 through 14, DBM concurs. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, can you focus on page 12, the BRFA, the request that was made? You concur with DLS's recommendation to eliminate the across-the-board reductions, that they be specified for fiscal year 2026, but I'm wondering why the BRFA, why the request through the BRFA was made
Sure.
in the first place.
Happy to explain.
Thank you.
So several weeks ago, the governor announced the administration's Government Modernization Initiative. This is an initiative where we have engaged with BCG Consulting and working with our state agencies to identify cost savings opportunities within administrative operations, with a particular focus, at least initially, on fleet management, IT, procurement, and real estate operations. The targeted projected savings from the initiative in the first year to year and a half is between $50 and $75 million. We have budgeted within the general fund budget a savings of $50 million with an anticipation that total savings across all funds will end up and materialize greater than $50 million. At this point in the project, We are at the stage, an early stage of working with the consultants and our staff across the agencies to identify those initiatives that are going to capture that savings over the course of the next year to year and a half. We don't, at this point, have the detail of how the savings is going to fall across agency and fund. And therefore, we proposed in the BRFA an exception to the requirement that any cost savings be budgeted at the agency and program level, I believe is the requirement. So we've requested an exception to that requirement for this year, and we budgeted the $50 million in anticipated savings within DBM statewide, with the anticipation that we'll be capturing the savings from across a number of agencies and funds. The BRFA requirement is there in order for us to have budgeted the savings, since we don't have the estimates at this point in time at the agency and program level. We agree with DLS's recommendation that that exception should be limited to fiscal 26 only.
I appreciate the explanation. Okay, so I guess wishful thinking and hoping that, there will be savings. And so the initiative just began.
Yeah, early stages. The contract with BCG
Right.
was awarded either end of October, beginning of November. And prior to including the $50 million in targeted savings in the budget, we spent several weeks with the BCG team and some of our agency staff sizing the opportunities based on initial analysis by BCG. That gave us a level of confidence that we do anticipate the $50 million in general fund savings is achievable. We would not have built that into the budget if we didn't have that confidence. What we can't tell you today is how the $50 million will fall across agency and fund and program, which would be the requirement under the existing budget language.
So do you feel that within a year you'll be able to tell us how it falls?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we probably would like to see that.
Yep, yeah, we're absolutely committed to sharing that information with the legislature and even publicly as we make progress on the project.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Rosenberg.
Thank you. I want to make a comment first. I think this initiative is particularly good, and I'm thrilled that the department is pursuing it, because I've seen it work when I was on the Board of Regents at the University System of Maryland. We did an equivalent kind of study that took out very substantial amounts of cost over a long period of time. I believe you told me privately that other states have done more or less what this is involved in. Is that correct?
There's definitely examples of other states taking up similar initiatives, and in some cases even with BCG.
Could you give us a couple of examples of which states or what they found?
Yeah, I might need to get back to you with specifics.
That's fine.
A couple that I remember off. I don't want to state the wrong state off
That's
the
fine.
top of my
If you can
head.
get back to us, please. I think
Yeah.
Senator Jackson raises an important question, is how real is this? My own view is that it's very real, but I
Yeah.
think it's helpful to see what other people have done.
In our process of selecting BCG, we reviewed a number of other states and looked at other vendors as well. Other states who'd been doing this with some of the vendors that we considered. And I just don't want to miss.
That's fine. No, but I think it's helpful because it's innovative, but it's not unique.
It's not, we are not the first.
And so it's helpful to understand.
Definitely not unique, which also, gives us high confidence in the savings target. And BCG in particular has done quite a bit of work along these lines with federal agencies as well.
That'd be great. Any information you give us, that would be helpful. Switching topics, you talked about the customer service challenges with the central collection. Specifically for dealing with those and more generally in your department, to what extent have you looked at the opportunities with AI? This is a question that we've asked folks with all kinds of agencies, and this seems to be a perfect example that it's worth thinking about. I wondered to what extent you've looked at it.
That's a great question. I'm going to ask Tony Fugit, who's our director within the CCU, to join us at the table, if that's
Great.
okay with you, and going to defer to Tony on the extent to which he and his team have considered any use cases for AI within the CCU. I think it's a great question.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name, as the Secretary mentioned, is Anthony Tony Fugit, and I serve as the Director of the Central Collection Unit. As I understand the question, are we using AI today? The answer to that is no, we're not using AI, but we are looking at AI. And it's resource intensive, meaning that you have to put the resources and invest in it to get any ultimate results. For example, we're
Can
looking
I get
at...
you to move that microphone just a little closer to you? Good, thank
For
you.
example, we're looking at things such as a chat box where you can go in and actually ask questions and get responses, et cetera, et cetera. But putting those types of things are labor intensive, and we have not utilized the resources to do it at this time.
So are you looking at it seriously?
Very seriously.
Okay. Well, if you could, by the time we get together next year, come back to us with where you are on that, because my impression is that the private sector is moving very, very quickly to use AI to reduce costs in customer service and improve quality of service. And talking to several of the other agencies that we've, at least in our subcommittee, there are some agencies, the Attorney General's office being one, the Alcohol and Tobacco and Cannabis Commission being another, who are moving fast on this. And then there are others who are like, what is AI? And so I'd love to see DBM be out front on this.
Yeah, I appreciate the suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions, committee members? Senator Zucker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, I hope you and your team are well. I need to connect with you offline at some point soon. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go to the State Board of Elections. Yashidari Rai is the analyst, and Jared Demarinis is the state administrator. Don't see him. He's not here. Yes, he's on this side. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Today, I will be presenting the fiscal 26 budget
Put that
analysis.
microphone a little closer to you.
Sorry.
You have to talk right into it. Thank you.
Today, I'll be presenting the fiscal 26 budget analysis for the State Board of Elections, or SBE. SBE is a 5-member board charged with managing and supervising elections in the state, registering voters, and coordinating candidacy. Its key goals are to ensure that all eligible Maryland citizens can register to vote and to provide a voting process that is convenient and accessible. The cover page chart on page 1 shows that the budget for SBE decreases by $15 million in fiscal 26 compared to fiscal 25. Of this, the reimbursable fund reduces by $11 million as the fiscal 25 reimbursable funds are related to SBE's major IT projects. These are budgeted under the Department of Information Technology's budget in fiscal 26 and will be added to SBE as reimbursable funds during the fiscal year. At the bottom of page 2 are 4 key observations on SBE's major IT projects that we will discuss later in the analysis. On page 5, Exhibit 1 compares voter turnout in the 2024 presidential general election with the 2016 and 2020 presidential general elections. As you can see, there was a significant increase in mail-in voters in 2020 due to COVID. In the 2024 presidential election, there was a balance between the different methods used to vote except for provisional voting. On page 6, Exhibit 2 shows the registered voters and participation in the presidential elections from 2004 to 2024. Voter participation rates in the 2024 presidential general elections decreased by 2.2%, and participation in the presidential primary election also declined by 14.4% compared with the 2020 presidential primary election turnout. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows the total fiscal 26 allowance for SBE, which is about $54 million. Of this, about 39% supports necessary equipment and supplies for election operations, which includes processing voter registrations. Exhibit 4 on pages 8 through 10 highlight the proposed budget change. The largest decrease of about $21 million is due to the estimated carryover of fiscal 25 appropriation for the new voting system major IT project for project development work in fiscal 26. This is partially offset by about $1,200 million each in training election staffs in preparation for the next election cycle in 2026, and also including the election telecommunication expenses. On page 11, personnel data shows that the fiscal 26 allowance includes one new regular position to serve as the communications director. As of December 31st, 2024, 3 vacant positions were reported, which have been unfilled for less than a year. Pages 12 through 16 highlights all the 4 major IT projects, including a proposed new IT project. The first one on page 12 is the statewide poll book modernization project, or SPM. As reported in last year's analysis, the previously contracted vendor for the new poll book project did not deliver a product that met minimum requirements during product testing. This led to the termination of the contract in February 2024. In its first quarterly report dated July 15, 2024, SBE noted that the new poll book project was closed as of June 30th, and a separate SPM project began on July 1st, 2024. SBE notes that a portion of funds would be held for pending litigation. We request SBE to comment on how much funding is being retained for pending litigation and provide an update on the process. SBE also plans to implement the new SPM project for the 2028 election cycle and expects to issue an RFP in March 2025. Regarding the project cost, as this project replaces the previous poll book project, the fiscal 25 working appropriation of $1.9 million was transferred to this project. Fiscal 26 allowance includes $3.2 million for the project with local share, which equals 81.6% or $2.6 million. The poll book costs are generally split equally between the state's general fund share and SB's local share. And SB notes that the agency will work with the Department of Information Technology to correct this fiscal 26 allocation. The revised estimated total project cost is $38.1 million, which is 71.6% higher than the previously approved poll book project. Concern remains on the issuance of RFP in March of this year and the targeted project implementation by 2028 election cycle. We request SB to comment on its contingency plan if the RFP and targeted implementations are further delayed. The second major IT project is the new voting system. Originally, this project was scheduled to be implemented before the 26 election cycle, but a new standard was adopted by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission that certifies voting systems in November 2022. And because no vendors have currently completed this new certification, SBE extended the current contract to March 2027. SBE plans to issue an RFP for the project by July 2025. The fiscal 26 allowance for the project includes $50,000 in do-it oversight. No funding for the project has been budgeted in SB for fiscal 26 because SB anticipates carrying forward about $19 million from the fiscal 25 working appropriation for any project development work. The total estimated project cost is $48 million, which is 12.7% lower than previously estimated during the 2024 session. We request SBE to comment on, 1, the decrease in estimated cost for the project and the implementation schedule for the new voting system for the 2028 presidential election cycle. Because both SPM and new voting systems are planned to be implemented during the 28 election cycle, a concern on how 2 major IT projects will be implemented effectively and successfully simultaneously still remains. We request SB to discuss efforts to mitigate impacts of trying to implement these 2 major IT projects at the same time on its own staff. The third major IT project is the new Campaign Information System Project, or NCRIS. The current contract for CRES will expire on March 31st of 2025. A vendor has been selected and approved by the Board of Public Works on January 29th of this year. SB expects to set up a temporary new CRES by April 1st, 2025, and a newly designed system to be in place by July 1st, 2025. A comprehensive transition plan is being prepared in collaboration with the existing CRES vendor to ensure a seamless transition to the new system. We request SB to provide an update on the next steps for the project following the approval of a new vendor. The project's total estimated cost is $1.2 million and receives about $572,000 in general fund in the fiscal 26 allowance, and the project is expected to be complete in fiscal 26. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting combined quarterly reports on the progress of and spending on each of the 3 major IT projects. On page 15 is the new major IT project, which is anticipated to start in fiscal 26. This project replaces and modernizes the current MD voters that serves as the single system that stores and manages official registered voters list. This project is anticipated to be completed by fiscal 2030. SBE plans to onboard a dedicated project team in fiscal 26 and also begin drafting an RFP for the project. The estimated total project cost is $35.6 million, and the fiscal 26 allowance includes about $600,000 for the state's share and about $471,000 for the local share. As discussed earlier, SB currently has 3 major projects in process, with 1 project completing in fiscal 26 and 2 projects anticipated to be implemented in 2028. Considering the multiple delays in implementing the ongoing projects and the potential strain on SB's staff and resources for another new project to be implemented simultaneously, DLS recommends deferring the new voter registration project and deleting the general and special funds budgeted for the project in fiscal 26. On page 17 are the 2 DLS's recommended actions. On page 18 is an update on the expanded opportunities for pretrial facility voting as requested in the 2023 JCR report. According to the report, SB surveyed state and local correctional facilities as well as LBs to identify successful practices, issues, and challenges in expanding voting in pretrial facilities. As a result of this survey, SB tailored its election communications to detained individuals to make all voter outreach informational materials more accommodating and useful. Some of the challenges to expanding voting opportunities were fluctuating number of incarcerated individuals, limited staff and storage space, and the lack of established processes like providing materials or picking up voted ballots from these facilities. For the 2024 elections, SB reported that voting packets were made available at the correctional facilities. A total of 126 ballots were returned for the entire 2024 election cycle from the pretrial facilities. Pages 19 to 25 are appendices. This is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good job. Thank you very much. Jared Demarinis, do you want to come up to the table? Welcome. You got the sneaker memo. I'm happy to see another person with sneakers on.
Yes. It's easier to walk around between everything. So, well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. I also, I have the, so just for the record, Jared Demarinis, State Administrator of Elections, and with me is Catherine Berry, the Deputy Administrator, and Shelley Holland, the Director of Budget and Finance. Yes, okay. So, first up, one of the things that DLS forgot to mention there was campaign finance. You know, it's not just voter registration and everything else. You guys all have to follow those campaign finance reports. It is a major function of our, you know, I guess our mission as well, and it helps inform voters on how to, you know, educate themselves on issues as well. So with that, I have submitted my written testimony, but first I just want to talk about some highlights from the 2024 election. And we enjoyed elections so much in 2024. We had a special election as well in Prince George's County for that. So we had to have 3 elections. Yeah. So, and we enjoy it again, so we're having, it will be in next month for the next one upcoming for the primary and the general. So, I love elections. Just keep them coming. So, with that, we have, undergone some transformations since, taking over. Most notably, we've tried to modernize our practices and updated a lot of outdated regulations while planning for the future. One of the things that I want to just highlight was that we have prioritized cybersecurity, and we basically hired a Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, that is now in-house rather than it was contractual. So I think that that's a great hire and allowing us more, credibility, and it makes me rest easier at night having that position filled. We're trying to be more proactive and less reactive. We're engaging and being more accessible on multiple fronts, social media, developing some modern logos and mottos, and our customer service is always one of our paramount things that we moved forward with going forward. So hopefully you saw that in the 2024 election out there, and if not, please tag me on social media. We've also welcomed many partnerships with the local boards of elections, the General Assembly, and advocates to make sure that we're enhancing voting experiences and opportunities. And I'm also always looking at new technologies, the way they can be implemented to assist election administration and also, again, the voting experience. For example, we used a language assistance program in Prince George's County for individuals that do not speak English as their primary language. And we did a text to cure for mail-in ballots when there's issues with that, so that individuals were able to cure their ballots quicker. They'll be getting notices there. And listening to the senator's other question, the previous thing there about use of AI, we are engaging and looking at AI as well, but responsible uses for it. Again, we are trying to increase voting access. And one of the things was we designated the Native American Lifelines as a National Voter Registration Agency Act, so they're enhancing voting opportunities there for Native Americans, as well as increasing opportunities in correctional facilities as well. I've expanded the voter address confidentiality program to ensure survivors of domestic violence having the rights to have their voices heard safely and securely without risking endangering themselves or their loved ones. In the past, I've also noticed we've had issues with the state administrator and state board members and the local boards. And one of the things is that I've focused on is making sure that we have openness, trust, and transparency in building those bridges back. Our state board meetings have been overhauled, showcasing and planning for our major IT procurements as well. So all these things are now more in the public domain. One of the things, too, as in the 2024 election that was always big was dis, mis, and malinformation out there. It was my mission to make SBE a trusted source of information for the public during this election cycle. And one of the things was not only being accessible on social media, but is to reimagine our voter education program. It was vote exclamation point MD, and it was really a very successful campaign, very stylish. Had lots of click-throughs and hits, and it allowed the ability for individuals to get all the correct information and then seamlessly download it onto their phone or tablet, whatever they want, including calendar updates. So all the dates and everything else were right there. One of the things, too, is that we had the portal up and running for the public to help report any dis or misinformation on social media platforms for us to help correct the record on that front as well. So, that was one of the bigger things that we we looked at. Understanding some of the budgetary deficits that is confronting the state right now, we've really taken hold of the hybrid workforce area here. And in fiscal year 25, we relinquished and downsized our office space as well. So this was resulted in a significant funding reduction in our lease office space in downtown Annapolis, which is, pretty expensive property. So.
So wait a
and-
minute, you're still there though, right? You're
Yes,
just-
we
you're just
have to
not
still be
using as
there, but
much
we're
space.
just a little smaller.
Okay.
So yes, so you guys, 151
We can
West
still
Street.
find you.
Right, we're there. Additionally, we are, of course, looking at the current federal landscape. It has caused some trepidation and consternation amongst not only myself and my budget officer, but other election administrators as well. But right now, our funding and our grants are secure. So, but we're keeping a close eye on that as we move forward with it. That is a day-to-day, hour-by-hour type of situation there. And again,
We know the feeling.
yes. And again, we're trying to always use the best technology to maximize cybersecurity and the physical security of our protection of the electoral process and our officials as well. As you know, in 2024, Maryland was a targeted state for suspicious packages. We had threatening letters and bomb threats at one point. So that threat is a very real threat. Again, the 2024 election was a great election. We had over 3 million Marylanders participate. Over 55% chose to vote early, and mail has now really taken hold. We're, post-COVID, we're still trying to find the right benchmark for it, but it was basically over 800 or nearly 888,000 people were sent a mail-in ballot. So that it was roughly, if you look at the chart that DLS provided there for the 24 election, you had, majority of people voting in person on election day. Early voting was nearly 1 million people as well, and then this was 888,000. So it was a nice breakdown. Additionally, when the elections are occurring, which is these are things that we're analyzing, has an impact on mail ballots as well. Because if the primary election, it was nearly 40% of the turnout was by mail at that point there. So, a June election or a primary election might be a little bit different. So it's definitely taking hold, and Marylanders are feeling very, very comfortable with mail and moving forward with mail election. But as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stats in there. I don't need to rehash them all for you. And one of the other things too, which is for the Budget Committee, just to let you know, is that, Maryland requires the fully funding of the Fair Campaign Finance Fund for gubernatorial elections. You needed to have $9 million in the fund in order to have it fully funded. Otherwise, monies had to be appropriated into that. Due to our great enforcement actions, we have now exceeded the $9 million that was already there. So you guys do not have to put any monies into that. And we did this without any interest allocations because we've already allocated those to the general fund for budget relief. So we're doing our fair share of that. Now, just on some of the analysis here, so just to answer some of their questions. One of them was about how much litigation that we had set aside for that. We have over $100,000 set aside in our budget to help mitigate any litigations from the poll book project. And with the poll books right now, just to let you know, we were basically gone out and procured all the poll books in the United States that we use. I went down and it was kind of a cool little contract that I did with the state of Georgia to buy them all, to get them shipped up here. But so we have now all the poll books. They are going to be used for the 2026 election. They are our mitigating strategy for what occurred with the failure of the vendor supplying us with a viable product for the last election there. And one of the things that the analyst mentioned was about the new voting system, and just wanted to talk about that. I do not expect any cost decreases for purchasing a new voting system. In fact, I think the opposite is going to be true. When I went to a conference, the industry standards trade representative out there was talking about a 20 to 50% increase of voting system costs that are now going to be certified to the 2.0 EEA certified standards. So that is something that we are now budgeting for and moving forward with it. Of course, when they say 20 to 50%, somehow along the line, I always think that it's going to be closer to the 50% mark than the 20% mark. So, but one of the things too is as we try to implement as many of these major IT projects here with new poll books and a new voting system, we are going to try to supplement that with additional staff, whether that is through the staffing contract or looking for new pins for positions to help us along the way there. But, this is one of the things that we're able to address and adapt. We are preparing for it, and the good thing is that we are already starting to mitigate and build out plans accordingly. We have used the local boards and brought them in on the process so that they feel included, and it's a collaborative effort there. So they're well aware of any sort of budgetary crunches or staffing that will be onto the counties as well. As for the CRIS system, the MD CRIS, which is what you guys are going to be using very soon, we have selected a new vendor, and transition is underway into getting a new system updated. And by the end of the year, we'll be having a lot of educations programs for you and for your treasurers and other filers as well. So that is underway moving forward with it. But again, our communication plan is going to have regularly status updates, ensuring transparency and accountability. I guess one of the other ones were the voting registration system here, and the delaying of that. And I can't disagree more with that. One thing about elections is that our deadlines are set in stone, and we have redistricting in the near future. It seems far away, but for election purposes, it is coming up. And when you have a major IT project that is basically housing 4.5 million, registered voters in the system, and moving it over and dealing with the 24 local boards, these projects do take time, and you want to make sure that they are sufficiently staffed and appropriately vetted and tested along the way there. Starting it now is imperative to moving that forward because we are looking at an implementation towards redistricting and looking at using more of the mapping systems to come in so that there is no manually transferring of data from counties or from the state when you do your redistricting processes into our system, so that we don't have to double check or triple check. It will be a seamless process. When one person enters it in and verifies it, we will move it into our system. But you need to do that now and move it forward, because it takes time. It takes a lot of testing. And, so I want to keep that moving forward and do not delay that as much. But with that, I think everything else was addressed in our written testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Is there anything that I missed?
Hi, this is Catherine Berry, the Deputy Administrator, just for the record. I just wanted to add on regarding the registration database. It's not just the registration of voters. It also includes the candidate filing module that starts the production of the ballots. It holds election judge information. It has various facets that are critical to our infrastructure. And our current infrastructure is 20 years old. So this is critical that we keep moving it forward. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
I welcome all questions.
Okay.
So,
Senator Solly.
I wanted to thank Jared for coming out to Dundalk and meeting with Native American Lifelines, which at one time was a part of their board, and gave them the opportunity to be a part of the voting process now. And they were very excited to just to be a part of that and to meet you and see what more they can do with the Native Americans. So I want to thank you very much for that. It was I just looking at their face and I just saw how happy they were. So I want to thank you very much for that. That was
Anytime.
exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Jackson, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I haven't figured it out. This is for a few of us, our 11th session, and for all of us, I believe it's been maybe not Senator Lewis Young in this committee having you before us, but Senator Lewis Young was on the election side of EEE. So I'm not sure if in EEE you lead talking about campaign finance like you do here. I'm really not sure about that. So I know we have a bit of a history on that. Exhibit 2 on page 6. Could you speak briefly to if you look at the numbers, there are 2 dips on the percentage of registered that voted in the primary elections. If you look at 2008 to 2012, that was a huge dip. And then in 2020 through 2024, there was another pretty sizable.
yes. So I think in the past here with 2008 and honestly, at this point here, anything prior to 2020 is almost not, you can't even look at that data anymore because COVID has really kind of altered the landscape a lot with voting habits and election administration. And that's why I was like the rise of like mail-in voting and the applications of it have kind of changed, I'd say, voting styles. You have 750,000 people on the permanent mail-in ballot list right now. So like they're going to get their ballots 45 days early. So I think that that's one of the interesting parts about where we are and how I'm looking at. So I'm now kind of looking at data points from 2022, 2024, and now and will be 2026, kind of figuring out the new methods of voting and everything. I think one of the other parts too is engaging more with on the social media platforms and increasing our presence there will help generate more buzz and excitement, or at least more information that they would feel to be that they would want to register and then participate with it. So it's kind of funny that you brought back like 2008, and I was like, 2020 really that was a watershed moment in like how people are participating. And just on another note too, which is just kind of in Prince George's County, like we're going to send out notices to registered voters because they've received all their ballots from the special election because it's a vote by mail, that, you know, going into 2026, you're not going to, unless you're on the permanent mail-in ballot list, we're not mailing you a ballot. So you would like one, you'd have to request it. If not, like, because I don't want them to get too familiar with the fact that ballots will get mailed to them when they don't, because, you know.
I certainly appreciate that. And thank you for your response. And we're trying our best to slow down the voting in Prince George's. You know, we do have cycles. We traditionally have cycles. We kind of, it's all been wiped out lately. So thank you.
I'm still totally amazed at the number of citizens that we have compared to the number of people that actually vote. It just absolutely blows me away. That But they're the same people that complain about a lot of things.
Yeah, my goal was always to get 100% voter participation, and
Sure.
like that's my ultimate goal, and I fell a little short this time. We were at 74%, I think, right? Yeah, so I was, yeah.
Well, I live in Montgomery Village, and for our little HOA elections that we have, we've got about 48,000 people that live there, and if we get 1,200 people that vote, that's a lot.
Right.
Senator Benson?
Yeah. Good to see you all. I want to talk a little bit about Prince George's County.
Okay.
I see where there is a huge decrease in your budget. And if you think about Prince George's County and what is happening with this election in March, and then we're coming up to another election, and how is that going to impact your bottom line? Are you all prepared? Is that going to get you in where you need to go? Is it going to do, how is that going to impact, how is Prince George's County going to impact your budget? Because I'm telling you, it's very expensive, I'm sure. Yes. But I'm just worried a little bit about the decrease and whether or not it's going to impact the bottom line.
So, yeah, sure. I'll let this one go to the budget officer here. Sure.
Hello, my name is Shelley Holland. I am the Budget and Finance Director for State Board of Elections.
Could you pull your microphone closer?
Can you hear me okay now? Much better.
Sitting to
Okay.
my right.
So, actually, the budget decrease is not our
To my left.
is not our general funds or special funds. It is actually the reimbursable funds for our major IT projects. So that budget decrease is not for normal operations.
And then I would just want to say that the other part too, which is local special elections in this case here, is 100% financed by the county. So all the operations that we do for the mail-in ballots and all the other costs that we are associated that the state board has, we then bill the county for and get it back. So the county is the one that's going to be bearing the brunt of having both the special in March and a special in June.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Any other comments? Senator Stallings, do you have your hand up? Senator Stallings, you're good? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm always available. If there are any questions. So, thanks.
So we are going to just cool our heels here for just a couple minutes till we figure out what we're doing.